She knew the risk down to her bones, giving away food she couldn't possibly afford, food that wasn't hers to give. Just one meal for a family adrift in weary silence. Maya Reyes, scraping by shift after shift at Sal's Diner, knew this single act of compassion could cost her the job that barely kept her and her son afloat. It could be the final straw, the one mistake that sent everything tumbling down. What she couldn't possibly know, as she forced a calm smile and invented a story about kitchen extras, was that this quiet, risky kindness was being watched, not by her stress boss, but by unseen eyes carrying out the final wish of a dying millionaire. The very next morning, a sharp-suited lawyer would stand at her counter, holding an envelope and news that would shatter her world not with disaster, but with a blinding, unbelievable hope. This is a story of how one desperate, heartfelt choice echoed into the universe and came back 1,000-fold. Maya Reyes breathed in the familiar scent of Sal's Diner, a blend of frying onions, stale coffee, and the faint sweetness of maple syrup from the morning rush. It was the smell of her survival. For 3 long years, since Leo's father vanished like smoke, leaving only memories and bills, this place had been her anchor, not a glamorous one. Certainly, the red vinyl booths had more cracks in character. The fluorescent lights buzzed with annoying persistence, and a jukebox seemed stuck perpetually in 1978. But it was work, honest work, exhausting work. She glanced at the clock above the kitchen pass-through. Nearly 9 p.m. Only another hour until closing, then the long cleanup, then the walk back to her cramped apartment where sleep rarely came easy. Tonight, the exhaustion felt heavier, settling deep in her muscles, blurring the edges of her thoughts. Rent was due Friday. 3 days. The envelope on her bedside table felt insultingly thin. Worse than the rent was the image of Leo, her 7-year-old sunshine, trying to discreetly hide the flapping sole of his left sneaker at school pickup today. He hadn't said a word, just gave her that quick, bright smile that always tried to shield her from worry. But she saw the faint blush on his cheeks, the way he avoided running too fast in the yard. That sight twisted something sharp and painful inside her chest. New shoes were a necessity, not a luxury, but finding the extra $20 felt like finding treasure on a deserted island. Her boss, Mr. Henderson, emerged from the back office, his face a familiar mask of stress. He ran Sal's on a tight margin, perpetually worried about rising food costs, dwindling customer counts, and the ever-present threat of the slick new chain restaurant that opened down the street. He wasn't a bad man, just preoccupied. He kept a sharp eye on inventory, on portion sizes, and especially on voided checks. Maya understood. She had her own precarious budget, her own constant juggling act. Every single dollar she earned was already earmarked. Rent, utilities, Leo's lunch money, the minimum payment on a lingering credit card debt from when Leo was sick last year. There was no slack, no cushion, just a thin, fraying rope of her paycheck stretched across the chasm of her expenses. She moved through the motions of her job with practiced efficiency, refilling Mrs. Gable's iced tea with exactly 2 lemon slices, no more, no less, making sure Mr. Peterson's fries were extra crispy, just the way he liked them, listening patiently as he recounted his latest fishing trip. These small acts of getting things right, of providing brief moment of comfort, were tiny affirmations in her often overwhelming world. They were proof she could still manage something, control some small corner of her life. Sometimes, though, the mask slipped, catching her reflection in the gleaming coffee machine. She saw the tiredness etched around her eyes, the worry lines deepening on her forehead. She looked older than 29. The faint dream she sometimes entertained of taking an online course, maybe something practical like medical coding, something that could lead to a better-paying job with regular hours, felt like a distant star, beautiful but unreachable. Her reality was the scent of grease, the ache in her feet, and the constant, low-level hum of anxiety that vibrated just beneath her skin. Yet, buried beneath the fatigue and fear, something soft persisted, a stubborn kernel of empathy. She remembered lean times from her own childhood, the feeling of a rumbling stomach ignored, the quiet shame of wearing hand-me-downs that never quite fit. She knew vulnerability when she saw it, and though her own resources were stretched paper-thin, seeing that familiar shadow in someone else's eyes sometimes triggered an instinct stronger than her own self-preservation, a quiet, insistent whisper that urged her to connect, to help, even when logic screamed against it. It was a dangerous instinct in her circumstances, but it was also, perhaps, the part of her that felt most truly alive. The bell above the diner door jingled, a hesitant sound that barely cut through the low murmur of the remaining customers. Maya automatically turned, her standard waitress smile beginning to form, ready to greet whoever had wandered in so close to closing. But the smile faltered, then faded, as she took in the group huddled just inside the doorway, blinking against the diner's fluorescent lights. They looked like a portrait of quiet desperation. A man, likely in his late 30s but appearing older, stood with his shoulders slightly stooped, his hand resting protectively on the arm of a woman beside him. Her face was pale, etched with exhaustion, dark circles stark beneath her eyes. She clutched a worn, thin purse as if it were a lifeline. Her clothes, like his simple work shirt frayed at the collar, were clean but undeniably faded, hinting at long use and careful mending. They weren't asking for anything, not overtly, but their posture, their weary stillness, spoke volumes. Between them, almost hidden, stood two children. A boy, maybe 9 or 10, watched the diner with unervingly serious eyes that seemed to absorb everything, his small hand firmly grasping the hand of a younger girl, perhaps 5 or 6. Her dark hair was pulled back in neat braids, tied with slightly frayed ribbons, but her little dress looked thin, the colors washed out from countless launderings. Unlike most children entering a place that smelled of fries and milkshakes, they didn't bounce or chatter. They stayed perfectly still, their small bodies reflecting the tension radiating from their parents. Their eyes were wide, taking everything in with a quiet, watchful intensity. Maya felt an immediate, visceral pang of recognition. It wasn't pity exactly, but a deep, resonant empathy. She saw her own struggles mirrored in their tired faces, her own fears reflected in the father's worried scanning of the room. She watched them choose a booth in the dimly lit back corner, the one with the long tear and the red vinyl seat that regulars usually avoided. The mother slid in first, pulling the little girl close, tucking her protectively under her arm. The father sat opposite, the boy beside him, their movements economical, almost subdued. He picked up a laminated menu, his gaze moving slowly down the columns. Maya, standing near the coffee station pretending to wipe down an already clean surface, saw his jaw clench subtly as his eyes lingered on the prices. Even from across the room, she could almost feel the mental calculations, the silent, stressful arithmetic of need versus cost. The mother leaned across the table, whispering something, her hand covering his where it rested on the menu. He gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his lips moving in a quiet reply. Maya took a slow breath, smoothed her apron, and walked towards him, notepad and pen in hand. She kept her voice deliberately soft, gentle. "Evening, folks," she said, offering a small, tentative smile. "Welcome to Sal's. Can I get you started with something to drink?" The mother looked up, her eyes meeting Maya's briefly before flicking away. Her return smile was fragile, fleeting. Just waters for all of us, please," she murmured, her voice thin, strained. "Thank you." The father nodded, his gaze fixed firmly on the tabletop. The children seemed to shrink slightly, their attention focused on tracing invisible patterns on the worn Formica surface. Maya quickly retrieved 4 glasses of ice water, placing them carefully on coasters. As she did, she noticed a father subtly angling the menu towards the kids' section, his finger hovering near the cheapest items. A bowl of vegetable soup, listed at $3.95, and a plain grilled cheese sandwich for $4.50. The little girl glanced up, her eyes momentarily drawn to the colorful picture of a cheeseburger platter with a mountain of fries, before her mother gave her hand a gentle squeeze, and her gaze dropped again. Maya's heart constricted. Oh, she knew that squeeze. She knew that silent communication, that parental dance of managing expectations while trying desperately not to show the strain. She'd done it herself just yesterday with Leo at the grocery store, when he'd reached for the slightly more expensive yogurt cups. The memory fueled the ache in her chest. Her mind immediately went to her own precarious situation. The rent, Leo's shoes, Mr. Henderson's watchful eyes. Giving away food wasn't just frowned upon. It was ground for immediate dismissal. Sal's wasn't a soup kitchen. She couldn't afford this risk. She absolutely couldn't. Panic fluttered in her chest. Her job was everything. It was a thin thread holding her life together. She should just take their order, the 2 soups, the shared sandwich they were clearly struggling to afford, bring out quickly and walk away. Protect herself. Protect Leo. It was a sensible thing to do. The necessary thing to do. But then her gaze fell on the little girl again. She was humming softly now, a tuneless little song, her head tilted back slightly as she watched the slow rotation of the ceiling fan overhead. There was an innocence there, a fragile hopefulness that seemed utterly detached from the worried tension filling the booth. Maya saw the mother reach out and gently stroke the girl's hair, her touch full of a weary, profound tenderness that transcended their circumstances. And then the father sighed, a quiet, almost inaudible sound of resignation, as he finally closed the menu and placed it decisively back in the holder. His shoulders slumped just slightly, a tiny movement that screamed defeat. In that instant, something inside Maya shifted. The fear was still there, cold and sharp, but another feeling rose to meet it, a wave of fierce, undeniable empathy. She saw herself in the mother's tired eyes. She saw Leo in the quiet longing of the little girl. The risk suddenly felt secondary. The potential consequences, terrifying as they were, seemed less important than the immediate, tangible need seated before her. Letting this family leave with barely enough food to quiet their hunger, knowing she could have done something more, that felt like a betrayal of something fundamental within herself. The sensible choice felt, in that moment, deeply wrong. She took another steadying breath, the decision settling not in her head, but in her gut. A quiet resolve hardened within her. Returning to the table, Maya forced her voice to remain light, professional, masking the tremor she felt inside. "Have you decided what you'd like?" she asked, her smile feeling a little more real this time. The father cleared his throat, avoiding her eyes. "Yes, we'll just have 2 bowls of the vegetable soup, please, and 1 grilled cheese sandwich for the children to share." His voice was low, tinged with a subtle embarrassment that cut Maya to the quick. The mother nodded silently beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. 2 soups, 1 sandwich, split between 2 growing kids. It was barely anything. Maya paused, pretending to scribble on her notepad while her mind raced, improvising frantically. Mr. Henderson would notice 4 full meals on a voided check. He'd ask questions. She had to make this believable, for the family's sake and for her own precarious job security. "You know," Maya began, leaning in just slightly, adopting a confidential tone, "it's funny you ordered soup. The kitchen actually, well, they messed up an order earlier, made 2 extra cheeseburger platters by mistake." She held her breath, hoping she sounded convincing, praying her face didn't betray the lie. "Big ones, with fries, the works." They're just sitting under the heat lamp, perfectly good. Chef was just saying he hates to toss them out. She gestured vaguely towards the kitchen. Would the kids maybe prefer those instead of sharing the grilled cheese? No charge, obviously. It's our mistake, really. Waste not, want not, right? A flicker of surprise crossed a mother's face. She looked uncertainly at her husband, then back at Maya, her eyes searching Maya for any sign of insincerity or pity. The father looked up sharply, startled. Suspicion wore with a desperate hope in his expression. "Are you sure about that?" he asked, his voice rough, hesitant. "We don't want to impose." "Absolutely positive." Maya insisted, injecting enthusiasm into her voice, pushing past her own rising anxiety. "Honestly, you'd be doing us a favor taking them off our hands." Before they could protest further, she turned her attention to the parents. "And for you two, the soup's fine, but let me tell you, our pot roast special tonight." She tapped her pen against her pad thoughtfully. "It's fantastic, really tender, big portions, comes with mashed potatoes and gravy. I think," she improvised again, feeling bolder now, "we might have just enough left for 2 servings of that too. Seems like the kitchen was overly ambitious tonight. Again, it'll just go to waste otherwise. My treat. Consider it a little end-of-the-night special from Sal's." A heavy silence descended on the table, thick with unspoken emotion. The mother's eyes suddenly shimmered with unshed tears. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. She simply looked at Maya, her expression a mixture of disbelief and profound gratitude. The father stared, his guarded facade crumbling, replaced by raw astonishment. He swallowed hard, and the little girl, who had clearly registered the magic word cheeseburger, let out a tiny, delighted gasp, her eyes wide and fixed on Maya with shining adoration. "We—" the mother finally managed, her voice thick and trembling. "We thank you. From the bottom of our hearts. Thank you. Think nothing of it," Maya said quickly, tried to appear nonchalant even as her own heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The lie felt enormous now, terrifyingly tangible. She knew exactly how much those meals cost. She knew Mr. Henderson would scrutinize the end-of-day reports. Maybe she could use her entire night's tips to cover the food cost, pretend the order was rung up wrong. It might work. It had to work. "Just happy it won't go to waste," she added, forcing another smile. "I'll get those right out for you." She turned and practically fled toward the kitchen, her legs unsteady beneath her. She avoided the cook's questioning gaze as she placed the order. 2 pot roast specials, 2 cheeseburger platters with extra fries. Keeping her voice low, calling it a manager special she'd handle at the register. The weight of the deception felt heavy, a cold counterpoint to the warmth blooming in her chest. But the image of the little girl's hopeful face, the sheer relief flooding the parent expressions, had anchored her resolve. This felt necessary. Right? Somehow? Minutes later, she carefully carried the heavy tray back to the corner booth. The rich aroma of roasted meat, savory gravy, and sizzling burgers filled the air around them, a comforting cloud. As she placed the plates down, 2 steaming platters of pot roast piled high with mashed potatoes and glazed carrots, and 2 perfect cheeseburgers nestled beside golden mountains of fries. The reaction was instantaneous and deeply moving. The children's eyes widened in unison, small sounds of pure delight escaping their lips. They dug in with an uninhibited eagerness that spoke volumes about their hunger, their earlier quietness forgotten. The parents exchanged a long, meaningful look, relief, gratitude, disbelief, and something akin to fragile joy all mingling in their shared gaze. The father picked up his fork, hesitated, then looked directly into Maya's eyes, his own glistening slightly now. Truly, we don't have the words to thank you, miss," he said, his voice stronger now, imbued with sincerity that resonated deep within Maya. Just enjoy your meal, Maya replied softly, meeting his gaze fully for the first time. Seeing you enjoy it is all the thanks I need. She offered a genuine, gentle smile, then retreated, busying herself with wiping down empty tables, refilling sugar dispensers, anything to give them privacy and keep herself occupied. But her eyes kept straying back to the corner booth. She watched the transformation, the way the tension slowly eased from the father's shoulders as he ate, the way the mother gently wiped the little girl's chin with a napkin, her movements fluid with maternal tenderness, the quiet conversation that started to flow between them, punctuated by the children's contented sighs. The initial cloud of weary desperation that had hung over them upon arrival seemed to dissipate with each bite, replaced by a fragile atmosphere of warmth and respite. They ate slowly, deliberately, savoring every mouthful. It wasn't just food Maya had given them. It was a moment of normalcy, a brief sanctuary from whatever storm they were weathering. As they were finishing, Maya noticed the little girl carefully, intently folding her paper napkin into a specific shape. The boy leaned over, whispering something to his father, who nodded, a faint smile finally touching his lips. The simple scene filled Maya with a profound sense of warmth, pushing back the persistent chill of her own anxieties, at least for a little while. This connection, this shared moment of humanity forged over burgers and pot roast in the tired corner booth, felt unexpectedly potent. It felt important, more important than the numbers on a voided check. When Maya returned to clear their plates, the booth was empty except for the neatly stacked dishes. But tucked carefully beneath the salt shaker, she found it, the little girl's folded napkin. Maya picked it up gently. It was folded into the unmistakable shape of a heart. On the smooth surface, drawn in shaky red crayon. Where had she even gotten crayon? Maybe from the bottom of her mother's worn purse? With the words, "Thank you," and beneath the words, a small, charmingly lopsided drawing of a smiling face with bright yellow, scribbled hair, clearly meant to be Maya herself. A thick lump formed in Maya's throat. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She carefully, reverently, tucked the napkin hard into the pocket of her apron, its fragile presence a tangible weight against her hip. Just as she did, the father appeared beside her, startling her slightly. He held out a small handful of crumpled dollar bills and some loose change. "Please," he said, his voice low and earnest, pressing the money towards her. "It isn't much at all, I know, but take it. For your trouble. For everything. For your incredible kindness." His gaze was direct now, filled with a quiet dignity and profound gratitude. Maya gently, firmly, pushed his hand away. "No, really," she insisted, shaking her head. "Please, keep it. It was honestly my pleasure. You'll need it more than I do." He hesitated, searching her face, seemingly trying to gauge her sincerity. Then he sighed, a heavy sound that carried the weight of unspoken burdens. We lost everything back east," he explained softly, his gaze dropping momentarily to the worn floor tiles. "My construction job just disappeared overnight. Company went bankrupt. We packed up what little we could fit in our old car. We're driving west, heading to California. My wife's cousin lives out there, offered us a place to stay until we can get back on our feet." He looked back up, his eyes conveying the exhaustion and uncertainty of their journey. "It's been harder than we expected. The stretch through the plains, gas money. Food, it dwindled faster than we thought. Your kindness tonight, giving our kids a real meal, treating us like people, it means more than words can say." "I understand," Maya said quietly, the truth of her own struggles lending weight to her words. "I really do. Sometimes just a little bit of help, a little bit of breathing room, can make all the difference in the world." The mother joined them then, her eyes still slightly red-rimmed but shining with a grateful warmth. She reached out and placed a light hand on Maya's arm. The touch was brief but surprisingly grounding. "You have a truly good heart," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you. We won't ever forget this. Ever." "Travel safe," Maya replied, managing a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I really hope California holds the fresh start you're looking for. I hope things turn around for you quickly." They gathered their few belongings: a small backpack, the mother's worn purse. The children, their bellies full, looked less subdued now, a hint of childhood energy returning to their eyes. The little girl clutched the leftover half of her cheeseburger, carefully wrapped in a napkin by her mother, like a precious treasure. As they reached the door, she turned back one last time and gave Maya a small, shy wave. Maya waved back, her hand instinctively touching the napkin hard in her pocket. After the door closed behind them, the diner felt abruptly quiet, the late-night stillness settling in more heavily than usual. The familiar end-of-shift tasks awaited, wiping down the sticky counters one last time, checking the sugar dispensers, mopping the floor. But first, the check. Mr. Henderson poked his head out of the office just then, scanning the remaining empty tables. "Slow night, huh?" he grumbled, more to himself than to Maya. He didn't seem to have paid any particular attention to the family in the corner or Maya's extended interaction with them. A small wave of relief washed over Maya, but was immediately followed by a fresh surge of anxiety about what she had to do next. She walked over to the humming point-of-sale system, her hands feeling cold and slightly clammy. She pulled up the order for Table 7, the corner booth, the original order she pretended to take: 2 vegetable soups, 1 grilled cheese sandwich. Total, $12.45, plus tax. Her finger hovered over the Void Transaction button. She took a deep breath and pressed it. A prompt appeared asking for a reason. She quickly typed, "Customer dissatisfaction, food quality issue." It was a lie, a small, necessary deception that felt heavy on her conscience. She knew Mr. Henderson occasionally spot-checked the void reports at the end of the week. She could only pray he wouldn't look too closely this time, wouldn't connect the small voided amount with the much larger cost of the pot roast and cheeseburger platters that had actually walked out the door. The potential cost of her kindness tonight still loomed large. She finished her closing duties on autopilot, her mind replaying the evening's events. The family's initial weariness, the children's quiet hunger, the hesitant gratitude, the father's hushed explanation, the little girl's crayon heart. Despite the gnawing fear about losing her job, a deeper, more persistent feeling resonated within her. A quiet sense of rightness, a warmth that spread through her chest and settled deep in her bones. She had taken a risk, yes, a significant one, but she had also alleviated suffering, offered dignity, and shared a moment of genuine human connection. As she finally locked the heavy glass door of Sal's diner and stepped out into the cool, damp night air, the streetlights casting long shadows on the wet pavement, she felt utterly drained but strangely lighter. The exhaustion was physical, bone deep, but the emotional weight, the constant hum of anxiety, seemed momentarily quieted. She clutched the napkin hard in her pocket as she began to walk home to her sleeping son. It felt like a fragile shield, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most valuable currency wasn't money, but empathy. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. Mr. Henderson's potential scrutiny, the relentless pressure of the bills. But tonight, she held on to the warmth of the choice she had made, and the quiet hope that the family was driving westward, fueled by more than just gasoline and leftover cheeseburgers. Perhaps they carried a little bit of renewed faith in humanity, too. The next morning arrived wrapped in the pale, watery sunlight of a day, promising more rain. The familiar routine began, waking Leo gently, the smell of toast browning, packing his lunchbox. Peanut butter and jelly again, an apple, 2 cookies she'd managed to save from the diner's bakery case yesterday. As he pulled on his sneakers, Maya's heart clenched anew at the sight of the left sole flapping precariously. He'd tried to fix it himself with tape. She noticed a clumsy effort that only highlighted the problem. "Soon, buddy," she murmured, kissing the top of his head, her voice tighter than she intended. "Mommy promises. We'll get those new shoes real soon." His answering smile was brave, but she saw the flicker of resignation in his young eyes. Walking into Sal's diner felt like stepping onto a stage where she didn't know her lines. The usual morning clatter, the hiss of the coffee machine, the sizzle of bacon on the griddle, the cheerful greetings of early regulars, sounded unnaturally loud today. Every nerve in Maya's body felt hyperalert, braced for the inevitable confrontation. She kept glancing towards Mr. Henderson's closed office door, imagining him sitting inside, frowning over the previous night's reports, the voided check from table 7 flagged in red. She pictured the questioning look, the demand for an explanation she couldn't easily give without incriminating herself. She plastered on her professional smile, took orders for omelets and pancakes, refilled coffee cups with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. Each chime of the bell above the door sent a jolt of adrenaline through her system. The morning wore on. 9 o'clock passed, then 9:30. The breakfast rush began to ebb. Maya started clearing tables, stacking plates, her movements becoming slightly less robotic as immediate fear began to recede, replaced by a dull, simmering anxiety. Maybe he hadn't noticed. Maybe the small voided amount was too insignificant to trigger an alarm. Maybe she'd actually gotten away with it. Around 10 o'clock, during a welcome lull, the bell chimed again. Not the usual brisk ring of a regular or the hurried jingle of a delivery person. This chime was measured, deliberate. Maya looked up from wiping down the counter, her heart giving a sudden, heavy thud against her ribs. Standing just inside the entrance was a man who looked utterly out of place in Sal's diner. He wasn't wearing a work shirt or casual clothes. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored dark gray suit, crisp white shirt, and a polished silk tie. His shoes gleamed. He carried a sleek, expensive-looking black leather briefcase. His posture was erect, his expression serious, professional. His sharp, intelligent eyes scanned the room methodically, lingering for just a fraction of a second on the empty corner booth, table 7, before coming to rest directly on Maya. He walked toward the counter with unhurried, purposeful strides. Maya felt a wave of cold dread wash over her, colder and more intense than before. This had to be it. Mr. Henderson must have called someone. Head office? A loss prevention specialist? Or maybe a lawyer? The thought sent ice water through her veins. She gripped the edge of the stainless steel counter, her knuckles turning white, her breath catching in her throat. She felt rooted to the spot, unable to move, bracing for the accusation, the dismissal, the ruin. The man stopped directly in front of her. His expression wasn't hostile, but it was intensely focused. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm, resonant, and utterly professional. "Are you Ms. Maya Reyes?" Her name, spoken so formally by this imposing stranger, confirmed her worst fears. This was official. This was serious. "Why, yes," she managed to stammer, her voice barely a whisper. Her mind raced, trying to formulate a defense, an explanation, anything. Is there a problem? Did Mr. Henderson? The man offered a slight, almost imperceptible smile, which somehow only heightened Maya's anxiety. "No, Ms. Reyes. There is no problem whatsoever. Quite the contrary, I assure you." He placed his briefcase carefully on the counter between them. "My name is Arthur Pendleton. I am an attorney." Attorney. The word hung in the air. Maya stared at him, bewildered now as well as terrified. If it wasn't about the voided check, Then what? Why would a lawyer be seeking her out at the diner? I represent the estate of the late Mr. Theodore Albright. Mr. Pendleton continued smoothly, his gaze steady and direct. Mr. Albright? Maya repeated, shaking her head in confusion. The name meant nothing to her. I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name. Are you sure you have the right person? Mr. Pendleton nodded patiently. Yes, Ms. Reyes, I am quite sure. And I wouldn't expect you to know his name directly. Mr. Albright was, well, he was an extraordinarily successful man, but also intensely private, especially in the last decade of his life. He valued his anonymity. Sadly, he passed away peacefully about 4 weeks ago. He paused, allowing the information to settle. Mr. Albright was also a significant philanthropist. However, he disliked public recognition for his charitable work. He preferred quieter methods. Maya listened, her mind struggling to connect these disparate pieces of information. A wealthy, private philanthropist? His lawyer? Here? Talking to her? It made no sense. One of Mr. Albright's deeply held convictions, the lawyer continued, his tone becoming slightly more personal, was that true human character, true goodness, is most clearly revealed in moments when people believe they are unobserved. Or, more significantly, when acts of kindness are performed despite potential personal cost or sacrifice. Maya's breath caught sharply in her throat. A sudden, impossible thought sparked in her mind. The family, last night, her decision, the risk she took, could possibly? No, that was absurd. Preposterous. Mr. Pendleton seemed to anticipate her dawning realization. Towards the end of his life, Mr. Albright established a small, discreet network of trusted associates. Their task was unusual. They were occasionally dispatched to ordinary places like this diner, bus stations, laundromats, public parks, not to ask for assistance themselves, but simply to observe, to witness everyday life unfolding, looking specifically for spontaneous, genuine acts of compassion and empathy. He gestured subtly towards a now-empty corner booth. The family you served last night, Ms. Reyes, the weary man, his anxious wife, the 2 quiet children, they were part of Mr. Albright's network. They were associates, playing a role. Their instructions were precise. To portray a family facing genuine hardship, needing a meal but only able to afford the bare minimum, and to do so without explicitly asking for charity or exaggerating their plight. Their purpose was simply to see how they would be treated. Maya felt the blood rush from her face. Her legs suddenly felt weak, unsteady. They weren't real? The father's story about losing his job, driving west, the mother's tears of the little girl, was all an act? A performance? A strange mix of emotions washed over her. Dizzying relief that they weren't actually suffering, confusion, and a faint, unsettling feeling of having been tested. They contacted our office immediately after leaving the diner last night, Mr. Pendleton went on, his voice remaining calm and measured. They provided a very detailed report of their interaction with you. They describe how you seemed to notice their situation immediately, your initial professional demeanor, and then your subsequent actions. He paused, his eyes meeting hers with a look of quiet respect. They reported how you invented a plausible story about kitchen extras to provide them with full, nourishing meals far exceeding what they had ordered, in a way that spared their dignity. They noted your insistence on not accepting the small amount of money they offered as a tip. They even, he added, the slight smile returning to his lips, mentioned the charming heart drawn on a napkin by the young actress playing the daughter. Maya's hand flew instinctively to her apron pocket, her fingers closing around the small, folded paper heart. It was real. That part was real. Mr. Albright, the lawyer stated, his voice taking on a more formal tone, had made specific, legally binding provisions in his last will and testament. He stipulated that individuals identified through these discrete observations, individuals who demonstrated exceptional empathy, generosity, and selflessness, particularly when facing apparent challenges of their own, were to be acknowledged and rewarded. He clicked open the latches on his briefcase. Ms. Reyes, the report on your actions last night deeply impressed the executors of Mr. Albright's estate. Your kindness, your willingness to risk your own security to help strangers, perfectly embodied the very spirit Mr. Albright wished to honor. He carefully withdrew a thick, cream-colored envelope from the briefcase and slid it across the counter towards her. According to the explicit instructions left by Mr. Theodore Albright, you, Maya Reyes, have been named as a beneficiary of his estate. Beneficiary? Estate? The word seemed foreign, unreal. Maya stared at the envelope, then back at the lawyer's serious face, her mind reeling, unable to fully grasp the meaning. I still don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. A beneficiary? What does that actually mean? Mr. Pendleton's professional demeanor softened into a warmer, more human expression. It means, Ms. Reyes, that Mr. Albright wanted to give you a gift, a substantial token of his deep admiration for the kindness you showed when you thought no one of consequence was watching. He gently nudged the envelope closer to her shaking hands. Inside this envelope, you'll find two things: a certified banker's check and a personal note that Mr. Albright dictated shortly before his passing, intended for someone exactly like you. Her fingers felt numb, clumsy, as she reached for the heavy envelope. It had a tangible weight that felt surreal. With trembling hands, she fumbled with the flap, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it vibrating through her chest. She slid out the contents. First, a folded piece of pale blue paper. A check. She slowly unfolded it, her eyes scanning the typed lines, struggling to focus. Then she saw the amount. $50,000. $50,000. The number seemed to leap off the page, blurring, shimmering, refusing to seem real. Maya gasped a sharp, choke sound. Her vision swam. $50,000. It was an impossible sum. More money than she earned in 2, maybe 3 years of backbreaking work at the diner. Enough to pay off all her debts. Enough to cover rent for years. Enough for a down payment on a small home. Enough for Leo's future. Enough to finally breathe. Tears welled instantly, uncontrollably, blurring the staggering figure on the check. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, not tears of sadness or fear, but tears of pure, unadulterated, overwhelming relief. A tsunami of emotion crashed over her. Shock, disbelief, gratitude, joy, so potent that her knees buckled. She gripped the edge of the counter tightly to keep herself from collapsing right there on the worn linoleum floor. The crushing weight she carried every single day. The fear of eviction, the worry over bills, the guilt of not providing enough, the constant, grinding stress, felt as if it was physically lifting off her shoulders, evaporating into the diner air. "Ms. Reyes, are you quite all right?" Mr. Pendleton asked, his voice laced with gentle concern. Maya could only nod mutely, incapable of speech, scrubbing at her wet cheeks with the back of her hand. Beneath the check was another piece of paper, smaller, thicker, folded once. Cream-colored, expensive-feeling cardstock. With trembling fingers, she picked it up. It was a handwritten note, the script slightly shaky, perhaps due to age or illness, but clear and legible. It read, "To the kind soul holding this note, if you are reading this, it means my faith was well placed. It means you chose empathy when it was difficult, perhaps even risky for you. You saw need and offered comfort, not for recognition, but from the goodness of your heart. Perhaps, like me in my younger, leaner years, you understand a way to struggle all too well. Or perhaps you simply possess a naturally compassionate spirit. Whatever your circumstances or motivations, your light shone brightly in a moment of perceived darkness. Please accept the enclosed gift. Do not view it as charity, but as a heartfelt thank you and as a form of recognition for your quiet integrity. It comes from someone who believed, until his final day, in the profound, transformative power of small, selfless acts of kindness. May this provide you with some measure of security, some well-deserved peace of mind. Continue to be the light you are. The world needs it. Sincerely, Theodore Albright. A strangled sob escaped Maya's lips, a sound that was half gasp, half laugh. She read the note again, then a third time, the words sinking deep into her soul. He knew. Somehow, this stranger, this wealthy man she'd never met, had understood. He'd understood the risk, the silent calculation, the choice made not from abundance, but from a place of shared humanity. He hadn't just left her money. He had left her validation, acknowledgement, understanding. Just then, the door to the back office creaked open, and Mr. Henderson emerged, clutching a stack of invoices, his usual frown firmly in place. He stopped short, his gaze taking in the scene. Maya, tears streaming down her face, but smiling through them, the immaculately dressed lawyer standing patiently beside her, the thick envelope and the check clutched in Maya's trembling hands. His frown shifted instantly to confusion, then concern. "Maya, what's going on? Is everything all right here?" he asked, stepping forward, his voice losing its usual gruff edge. Maya looked up at her boss, her vision still blurry, but her smile wider and more radiant than perhaps it had ever been. "Yes, Mr. Henderson," she managed to say, her voice thick with unshed tears and pure, unadulterated joy. Everything is absolutely amazing." She held up the check, the impossible number still seeming to vibrate, and then gestured towards the lawyer. Mr. Pendleton, with quiet efficiency and professional courtesy, offered a brief, concise explanation to the utterly stunned diner owner. He recounted the story of Mr. Albright, his unusual philanthropic methods, the family who had visited last night, and Maya's unwitting role in fulfilling conditions of the late millionaire's will. Mr. Henderson listened, his jaw progressively slackening, his eyes wide with astonishment. He looked from the lawyer to the check in Maya's hand, then back to Maya herself. The perpetual stress seemed to drain from his face, replaced by sheer awe, and perhaps, Maya thought, a touch of contrition for any moment he might have doubted her character over a potentially voided check. "Well, I'll be—" Mr. Henderson breathed out, shaking his head slowly in disbelief. "Maya, kid, that's just incredible. Unbelievable." He looked at her, then really looked at her, with a newfound, profound respect shining in his eyes. "I always knew you had a good heart, Maya. Always. Just wow." Maya laughed then, a real, bubbling, unrestrained laugh of pure relief and happiness, the sound echoing strangely in the quiet diner. She looked down at the check one more time, then at Mr. Albright's note, then at the lawyer's kind eyes, and finally at her flabbergasted boss. The world felt tilted on its axis, rearranged in the most wonderful, unexpected way. It wasn't just the money, although the sheer relief of financial security was intoxicating. It was more than that. It was the affirmation, the astonishing proof that a single, quiet act of kindness, offered without expectation, and despite personal risk, could ripple outwards and return in ways beyond imagination. The little crayon heart, still safe in her pocket, felt suddenly imbued with an almost magical significance. It was a symbol of hope delivered by a stranger's will, facilitated by actors, and brought to her counter by a lawyer on an ordinary Tuesday morning. A testament to the hidden goodness that sometimes waits patiently in the most unlikely corners of the world. The weeks and months that followed unfolded like a dream, yet grounded in a new, tangible reality. The $50,000, safely deposited and managed with careful guidance from a financial advisor Mr. Pendleton had kindly recommended, wasn't a magic wand that erased all life's problems, but it was a powerful shield deflecting the constant barrage of financial anxiety that had defined Maya's existence for so long. First, the necessities. Rent paid, not just a month, but several months in advance. The relief of knowing they had a secure roof over their heads was immense. Then came the glorious trip to the shoe store. Maya watched, tears welling for a different reason this time, as Leo beamed, stomping his feet in sturdy, brand-new sneakers, the ones with the cool blue stripes he'd admired for months. He walked taller that day, his steps confident, the simple gift of new shoes seeming to bolster his spirit as much as support his feet. Groceries were bought without the painful calculus of cents per ounce. Fresh fruits, healthy snacks, even the occasional treat became part of their routine. The rattling old car got the repairs it desperately needed. The lingering medical debt was paid off in full. Each transaction felt like loosening another tight band around her chest. Maya didn't immediately quit Sal's. The structure, the familiar faces, the quiet rhythm to work felt grounding amidst the whirlwind of change. But she cut back her hours significantly, cherishing the newfound time she had with Leo, helping with homework without being exhausted, reading bedtime stories without rushing, planning small weekend outings to the park or the zoo, things that had once felt like impossible luxuries. Mr. Henderson, forever changed by the incident, treated her not just as an employee, but almost as a partner, seeking her opinion, trusting her implicitly, even giving her a raise she hadn't asked for. The atmosphere in the diner itself seemed subtly lighter, as if touched by the lingering echo of unexpected fortune. But the gift was more than just financial relief. It was an investment in the future. With newfound confidence and resources, Maya enrolled in that online bookkeeping course she had long dreamed of. She discovered she had a knack for numbers, a mind for organization. Studying diligently in the evenings, after Leo was asleep, she felt a sense of purpose blooming within her, separate from her role as a mother or a waitress. She started researching affordable housing options, dreaming of a small condo in a quieter neighborhood with a better school district, a place where Leo could truly thrive. The future, once a landscape of fear and uncertainty, now stretched before her, full of potential. She often thought of Theodore Albright, the invisible benefactor whose peculiar legacy had transformed her life. She kept his note pressed safely within the pages of a book, rereading his words whenever doubt or insecurity crept in. She also thought of the actors who had played the struggling family so convincingly, hoping their lives were, well, grateful for the role they played. And the experience changed Maya in deeper ways, too. Having known scarcity so intimately, and now experiencing unexpected abundance, she felt a profound responsibility to pay the kindness forward. It wasn't about grand gestures, but small, consistent acts. Leaving an overly generous tip for a server who looked as tired as she used to feel. Buying a hot meal for the homeless man who often sat near the library. Offering to babysit for a neighbor struggling with childcare. Volunteering at Leo's school library one afternoon a week. She performed these acts quietly, without expectation, simply because she understood, with a clarity born of experience, the immense power held within seemingly insignificant moments of human connection and generosity. Life wasn't suddenly effortless. Challenges still arose. Leo got sick. The car needed new tires. Doubts about her bookkeeping course occasionally surfaced. But the foundation beneath her feet felt solid now. The constant, grinding fear was gone, replaced by a resilient, quiet optimism. She had security, she had time, she had hope, and sometimes, usually late at night when the apartment was quiet and Leo was breathing softly in his bed, Maya would take out the small, fragile napkin heart, now carefully preserved in a small plastic sleeve. She would trace the faded crayon lines, the simple drawing of the smiling face, the earnest thank you. It served as her constant reminder, a reminder of a weary family in a corner booth, of a difficult choice made against the odds, of a sharp-suited lawyer bearing astonishing news. It was proof that empathy wasn't weakness, but strength, that kindness, even when it feels costly, can reverberate in ways we can never predict, creating ripples of warmth and hope that touch shores we may never even see. The world Maya knew held both shadow and light, but she now carried within her the unshakable knowledge that the light, the quiet, persistent light of human goodness, could appear when least expected, changing everything in a single grace-filled moment. And she resolved always to keep her own small light shining,